So, assassination attempts are never fun, but then there's a time and a place where you come to the point in which they are necessary. And under such so called necessary circumstances, governments that are otherwise portrayed as this unbreachable force that has brains the likes of which we can't comprehend, that has reaches the likes of which we can't comprehend. And then we find about the case of Fidel Castro and how one of the leading organizations in the United States, the CIA, tried a total of 638 times to assassinate him, which makes absolute no sense considering that the CIA is supposed to be super, super intricate in what it does and super capable. But where does the story even begin? Well, if you go back to the actual fact, the stories begin with a guy called Fulgencio Batista. Now, Fulgencio Batista was essentially the leader of Cuba back in the day. And if you look at it from two sides of the story, some say that he was a very bad leader and some say that he was a very good leader. Bottom line being that there was enough unrest to trigger an all out militia armed movement on the 26th of July. They overthrew the Batista government, and this army, or so called army, was led by none other than Castro. The year 1959 was when he was officially named PM, and that is essentially where things go downhill. Now, the relationship between Castro and the United States government was never nice. And considering that it's less than 100 nautical miles from the United States coast to Cuba, it makes absolute sense for the United States to be very concerned about what the Cuban government is like. But everything was going kind of well up until the point where Castro finally agreed that, all right, some things have to be done because we are not going to be a nation that just lays down its arms in the scenario in which US gets any bright ideas. The whole thing came to a tumbling end in terms of the relationship that could have been harvested was when the United States decided to blow up a ship that was carrying immense amount of ammunition and weaponry which was going to Cuba. And as a result of which, Castro decided to join forces with the USSR, which was in, well, let's just say the opposite team as the United States. And hence, the CIA attempts began. Now, these attempts have been verified by none other than Fabian Escalante. And this guy was the head of intel for the Castro government. So he knows what he's talking about. He's not talking up in smoke. And he says that from the year 1960 up until the year 2000, there were a total of 638 attempts on the Cuban leader. The CIA was going out of its way in ways that can't even be thought of today as actually possible, because these were things that you'd actually see in movies or weird low budget crime shows. But it was all real. The CIA actually did most of these things, and things that I'm talking about is the fact that the CIA tried to, well, let's just say, hire the mafia. Yeah. So the CIA tried to hire the mafia by paying them $150,000, which would be a total of $1.2 million in today's money. But the mafia, of course, operates on certain ethics, as we all know. And the mafia said, no, you know what, we'll do it for free because we have certain agendas here. And we always want to have the capability of asking the government because the government owes us a favor. It is not a bad thing at all for the government to owe the mob a favor. You can call that favor in any time you want for whatever you want. The profit margins, oh dear Lord, you don't want to even begin to comprehend the things that could have been pulled with that amount of leverage on a government by the mob. But yeah, nevertheless, the mob hired plenty of assassins, tried to get close enough to Fidel Castro for an attempt but never could. The closest they ever got was when one of their assassins managed to be a waiter at one of these restaurants that Castro visited, and he asked for a milkshake. And this dude had to put in a chemical into the shake and give it to Castro. He went into the freezer to get the pill because it was supposed to be refrigerated, and found out that the pill had fused to the wall of the freezer. You know how things get when they get stuck a little bit? He tried to yank it out, broke the pill in half, spilled the poison everywhere. That's it. That was the closest that the mob ever got. The CIA ultimately got impatient and went a different direction. But the fact of the matter was that the mob was involved. Right? It's just weird to say that the CIA had to get the mob involved for an assassination attempt. But hey, who am I to judge? Let's move on to the next attempt. What if I told you that, one of these people who love picking seashells on the seashore are very inquisitive about what might be there? And Castro was exponentially known for being someone who would love the open oceans. He would go out for a swim into the open ocean every morning. And the CIA believed that what we can do here is plant explosive seashells near the beach. And as soon as he goes for a swim, we blow him to smithereens. Now tell me, this does not sound like a plot from a Roadrunner cartoon or a horrible Tom and Jerry episode. I don't understand how the CIA could even contemplate that this was something that was a valid idea. But this wasn't even the worst of their ideas. The next thing was the fact that, of course, Cuba is known for its cigars. And Castro was someone who was into cigars a lot. So, naturally, the next approach was the CIA trying to make sure that they gave Castro a cigar that was either rigged with some kind of mad poison, that as soon as he put the cigar in his mouth, even though he didn't light it, he would be dead. Or you put explosives. Yes, you heard me right. You put explosives into the cigar, so as soon as he goes to light it, he blows his face off. Now this exact scene I have seen in Tom and Jerry. I know this scene exists in Tom and Jerry, where this exact thing happens. This exact thing happens in Bugs Bunny as well, when Daffy Duck has to pull his beak back. Can you imagine the fact that the CIA was thinking of plots like this? But one of the more serious plots, if we go to see, was the fact that the CIA managed to get in contact with one of Castro's ex-girlfriends, a woman by the name of Marita Lorenz. And Marita Lorenz was hired by the CIA thereafter and convinced that, okay, this is what you need to do. You need to help us assassinate Castro. We are going to train you how to use poison. So, naturally, as anyone would, she underwent the training and went back to Cuba, met up with Castro, had the ability to be in a one-on-one situation with Castro. As she went to reach for the pills, she realized that she had stored them in a cream container, right, to get through security and stuff. But they had melted into the cream container, and now she had nothing. And she freaked out and told Castro everything. Castro lost his mind, and that was, you could say, essentially one of the last times that the CIA could ever get close to assassinating Castro. The Castro leadership went on from 1961 all the way to 2011. And the point was that the only thing that killed Fidel Castro in the end was nature. He died of natural causes at the age of 90. He outlived 638 attempts by one of the leading organizations in the world that people fear the most. That any person who is into the underworld, anyone who's into the mob, anyone who's a crook, a criminal, a drug dealer, a drug trafficker or whatever, knows that if the CIA is coming after you, you're screwed essentially. And here we have Fidel Castro, who just laid back. And he was not in hiding, he was not in exile, he was none of that. They knew where he was, they knew his positions, they knew his movement, but they could not do anything about it. The CIA did everything in their power to try and get to Castro. And the bottom line is that they failed. I don't know what that says, but the point was that Castro outlived more assassination attempts, which were more ridiculous than some of the most unfunniest cartoons that I've seen as a kid. And you would just hope that an organization that holds such amount of prestige to it could do a better job. I mean, that's just my opinion. Alright, I'll see you guys.